I'm Stephanie Christmann. I developed farming with alternative pollinators. This is economically sustainable pollinator protection, an alternative model to those used in Europe and America. We need scalable options also for low and middle income countries. The aim is to increase the income of farmers without subsidies or other costly measures. The higher diversity and abundance of insect pollinators induces more flowers to develop a fruit. The farmers get higher direct revenue from their entire fields. Last but not least, FAP fields need less chemicals for pest control due to a higher abundance and diversity of predator insects. This is good for the farmer's income and health. The issue is that the farmer should get a higher income from the same surface if he protects the pollinators. And he protects the pollinators by a different planting instruction. So here, for instance, this is the field of Mohamed Pranta. He produces as a main crop eggplant on 75% of the area. And 25% of the area we use for habitat enhancement. Like for instance, we have sunflower, we have green pepper, zucchini, basil, coriander, anise, I think melon over there. So all these additional plants, they give income to the farmer, but they also attract pollinators with different color of petals and by different flower type. So the diversity and abundance of pollinators is much higher here. We use the 25% zone also for water support and for nesting support. Nesting support is very important, yeah? For instance, the carpenter bee, the big black bee you have seen in the lab, needs soft old wood to make the nest. It's an important pollinator in Morocco, but in the large-scale fields you don't find old wood anymore. So we test different nesting support here, and we check what is accepted by the pollinators, and then we recommend it.
This is all done out of local materials. The farmer doesn't have higher investment.
No, that's good. We do from local materials. Good income already in the first year and low investment, this promotes a good adoption rate. Most people think on honeybees when they hear about pollinators, but in fact, wild pollinators provide about 85% of the service. There are many different wild species transporting pollen from one flower to another, like bumblebees, carpenter bees, leafcutter bees and mason bees, but also flies, wasps, butterflies and others. Wild pollinators work in a smaller radius than honeybees, 50 to 2,000 meters far from the nest, whereas honeybees fly up to 5,000 meters. Pollinators have 4 key functions. About 3/4 of all main crops for human consumption, like fruits, vegetables, oilseeds, coffee, cacao, tea and spices, depend on pollinators. Lacking these crops, we would suffer from malnutrition. The dependency on pollinators has increased a lot during the last 50 years, in particular in the drylands. On this map, we see the increase of pollinator dependency of agriculture over decades. Second key function, 87% of all flowering plants require an insect pollinator. Loss of pollinators can cause a cascade of extinctions and collapse of ecosystems. Pollinators also play an essential role in climate change adaptation, in particular in the drylands. By coincidence, most pollinator-independent crops like wheat, rice and maize require more water than pollinator-dependent crops like tomato, apple, apricot or here eggplant. Also, the income per drop of water used is higher for pollinator-dependent crops. Additionally, and not only in the drylands, cross-pollination enriches genetic diversity and thus the adaptation of plants to changing climate and environment. Fourth, all ecosystem services like production of cotton, medicinal plants, water storage or tourism depend to some extent on pollination. Loss of pollinators might result in interlinked poverty spirals, which can cause conflict among people and, in the worst case, even war. During the last decades, we have developed more and more agro-industrial landscapes. These fields cannot sustain pollinators the same way anymore, because such landscapes provide nectar and pollen just for some weeks, if at all. Also, there are no nesting materials or safe nesting sites and no shelter against wind. Pollinators are a precondition for human well-being, but pollinator protection by subsidies will not work in most countries and continents. Therefore, maybe you want to support us communicating the FAP approach, for instance by social and mass media and by schools. Farmers need to come to know it. Set an example by seeding some strips, providing nectar and pollen for pollinators, to induce them to better pollinate your crops. We have many reasons to support these insects. Let's take action.